2016 had a 12-team playoff. In this video, we're going to be going over the hypothetical scenario whereas the 4-team was expanded to a 12-team and all the rules applied with the current 12-team format. Conference champs would get in and there would be 6 at large. In this version, would have 6 conference champions because the Pac-12 still exists, and then 6 at large. So, who do you guys think would be in the 12-team college football, but more importantly, who do you think would win the 12-team playoff? Let's get into it. First, let's see how the actual 4-team playoff standings finished out for the 2016 season. We had Alabama 1, Clemson 2, Ohio State at 3 with an at-large, and Washington at 4, whereas Penn State and Michigan finished just outside the top 4 at number 5 and 6. And to the right is the final CFP standings, the top 25. So this year in college football, 2016 was such a crazy year. We had Louisville with Lamar Jackson dominating to start the season, then kind of faltering. Of course, they had the epic clash with Clemson early in the season. We had Penn State and USC, 2 teams that started off a combined 3-5 at the beginning of the season, turned into 2 hottest teams in the whole country at the end of the season. And then we had the epic matchup between Michigan and Ohio State in the shoe, where JT was short, but he wasn't really short, and Ohio State ended up winning that one and ultimately got themselves into the playoff. And just a bunch of other crazy games that happened. Tennessee with Georgia, the Hail Mary. I mean, this season was just miraculous. And of course, finished off with Clemson beating Alabama in the national championship game to prevent them from going undefeated. So this is what the actual 2016 finished out. Let's get in to see how the 12-team playoff would shape up. And of course, we'll start it with number 1. The obvious, nothing would change with this. Alabama is the number 1 seed, 13-0, won the SEC. There's no doubt, and there would be no debate that this is the only undefeated Power 5 squad. They would be the number 1 overall seed in this one. Number 2 would be Clemson still, 12-1. Only loss was to Pittsburgh by 1 point, but then they beat Virginia Tech in the ACC championship game to move to 12-1 and be the ACC champ. They would obviously be the number 2 team in this selection with the automatic conference qualifiers. Now, number 3, this was where there would be a big change. I do believe Penn State, the automatic qualifier from the Big Ten, would be the number 3 seed. Ohio State actually had this in real life. They were ahead of Washington, but I think with this one, the way Penn State was playing and the quality of teams they beat along the way to get to where they were, I think the committee would put Penn State at number 3, and they would put Washington at number 4. And I think the selections remaining would explain why Penn State would be 3 instead of 4, and Washington would stay at 4. But these 2 teams are the remaining 2 highest conference champions. They would get an automatic qualifier, the Big Ten, the Pac-12. So SEC, ACC, Big Ten, and the Pac-12 with the top 4 conference champions. They get all 4 teams that get a bye into the quarterfinals. Number 5 team would be Ohio State, no doubt. No surprise. They're the ones that originally made the playoff. They beat Oklahoma, they beat Michigan. The only loss was the Big Ten champ Penn State in Happy Valley, middle of October. So Penn State gets the whole playoff game in the first round. The 5 seed don't automatically qualify, don't get a bye, but they get the highest remaining. They're the highest at-large team to get into this 12-team playoff. Number 6 would be Oklahoma, the Big 12 champ, 10-2. They lost this aforementioned Ohio State, but they did win the Big 12. Only 1 loss in conference. They do believe they were the highest ranked besides the 2015 Oklahoma squad. The previous year, the 2 losses ultimately did not get into the 14 playoff, but they get the 6th seed as the 5th automatic qualifier in this 12-team hypothetical scenario. Number 7 would be Michigan, team that started off one of the best teams, probably weeks 1 through 10, week 1 through 11, one of the best teams in college football, before they lost to Iowa on the last second play, field goal in Iowa City. Then the very next week, Wilton Spate didn't play. They had a close game against Indiana, and of course they had that infamous close loss to Ohio State in the shoe in the last week of the season, preventing them from going to the Big Ten championship. It got them to 10-2. But in this scenario, they did enough in the regular season to get to a home, not only in the playoff, but a home playoff game. They beat the Big Ten champ Penn State early in the season, and they beat 10-win Wisconsin early in the season as well. So they get the 7th seed. And then the final team to get a home game is the Wisconsin team that Michigan and Penn State and Ohio State all beat. Got the 10 wins. Again, they didn't play that hard of a schedule, but the 3 toughest teams they played, they all lost to. And it was by within a touchdown of each other. They lost to Ohio State at home in overtime by 7. They lost to Michigan on the road 14-7. And they lost to Penn State in the Big Ten championship game by 7. So the rest of the teams they played, they just destroyed them. So Wisconsin team is definitely a good team. The Big Ten had 4 teams in the top 8 this year. That shows how deep the freaking Big Ten was in 2016. They get the last home playoff spot in this 2016 scenario. So Wisconsin would play the 9 seed USC, one of the hottest teams going down the stretch to finish out the season. USC started off 1-3 before they reeled off 8 straight wins, including a win over Pac-12 champ Washington late in the season in November. That early season ultimately cost them a chance to be in the 14 playoff, but USC earned a shot in real life to the Rose Bowl, where they play Penn State. But in this scenario, they're going to go on the road in Madison to Wisconsin, play the Badgers, get the 9 seed, and that's where they finished 9-3 in the regular season. The 10 seed would be Michigan would host Florida State, the ACC runner-up in their division, to Clemson. They lost 3 games, including one of them to Clemson, a close game. Florida State, Dalvin Cook, Francois, that team was really good. They just had some questionable losses to them before they get to 9-3 season. But they obviously did enough in this scenario to get to the 10th slot. They go on the road to face Michigan in Ann Arbor, a game these 2 teams played in real life. But this one is going to be a little different. We're going to assume all these teams are fully healthy, and this one's going to be an actual home and away playoff game. So 7-10 matchup, Michigan versus Florida State. 6-11 matchup is Oklahoma will face Colorado, the Pac-12 runner-up. Only losses were to Washington, and they lost to Michigan early in the season as well. This Colorado team is actually really good. They were picked to finish, I think, 6th or dead last in their own division, but they ended up winning it. They did get destroyed by Washington in the Pac-12 championship game, but they're definitely one of the 12 best teams to be in the playoff, and they earned their spot getting the first round against Big 12 champ Oklahoma. And finally, the last team in the playoff, the Group of 5 representative, the highest remaining conference champion, is Western Michigan, 13-0. They won the MAC. Only one of 2 undefeated teams in the whole country besides Alabama. They had Corey Davis just balling out at receiver. They beat all the MAC teams they needed to, obviously. Got the 10 wins in the MAC, including the conference championship game, and they are the last team in this 12-team playoff scenario. So the field is set. Alabama, Clemson, Penn State, Washington get the bye. Wisconsin, Michigan, Oklahoma, and Ohio State all get a home playoff game in the first round. So how would this hypothetical playoff scenario play out? Well, let's go over it game by game so we crown a national champion. First round, Wisconsin facing USC. I do believe USC would win this. Yes, it's December in Madison. Yes, it's Wisconsin. They're a really good defense. Yes, I don't know how I don't think the elements would favor Southern Cal, but at the same time, this team was just so damn hot. They're playing so well. Sam Darnold, Dory Jackson, Ronald Jones, freaking Juju Smith-Schuster, all those people, players on that team, they're stacked. I think they do enough to beat Madison, even on the road in a playoff environment, to move to the quarterfinals to face Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. I think Ohio State would beat Western Michigan pretty easily, move to 12-1. I think Western Michigan is a really good Group of 5 squad. I just don't think they would have any chance against Ohio State team that was just suffocating in defense. I think they had the most takeaways, or they had the most defensive touchdowns as a defense in 2016. I think they would just play with Western Michigan, and they would be really, really easy win over the Broncos there up in Kalamazoo. Moving over to the other side, rematch in real life, Michigan taking on Florida State. I do believe in a hypothetical scenario, everybody's healthy. In a home environment, I do believe Michigan beats Florida State in that December weather in Michigan. Florida State, obviously in Tallahassee, much different weather. They have to travel on the road. I just think Michigan would ground and pound, and I think they would ultimately win the game. I don't think it would be just the aerial assault that the Seminoles had in real life. I think Michigan would get it done. They move on to the quarterfinals to face Clemson in the Orange Bowl. Finally, the last of the first round matchup, Oklahoma versus Colorado. No surprise, Colorado, I think, or Oklahoma would win over Colorado. I think Oklahoma with Baker Mayfield just balling out. They had Joe Mixon on offense. That team was so good. I think Colorado kind of would falter down the stretch, and they would not recover from that Pac-12 loss to Washington, and ultimately suffer defeat in the first round of the playoffs. So, quarterfinals is set. Alabama taking on USC in the Sugar Bowl. Ohio State taking on Washington in the Cotton Bowl. Clemson taking on Michigan in the Orange Bowl. And then Penn State takes on Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl. So we'll start off with the rematch of Week 1. I think it took place in the Cotton Bowl Stadium, AT&T Stadium. Alabama versus USC. They get a rematch in the playoff quarterfinals. And honestly, there's no way this game would be a 52-6 game. The way each team started, the way each team finished in real life, I do not think USC would lose by 46 points to Alabama in this one. But I still think Alabama would win the game over USC and Sam Darnold. And I think this would be just this would be an all-time classic game if these two teams met up at this point of the season. The way they both were playing, I think would be an all-time instant classic. But I think Alabama still comes away with the victory to advance to the semifinals. On the other side, Ohio State, I think, would beat Washington in this quarterfinal matchup. I think Washington was a good team. I don't think they were a great team. This Ohio State team was a great team, and they just had, like I said before in their first round matchup, their defense was next level. The Big Ten's defense in this year, 2016, Michigan, Ohio State, and Wisconsin, their defense was absolutely on a new level with the way they were playing against all their opponents. And I think Washington was kind of, I wouldn't say a boring team, but they didn't come out as like, okay, they have a chance of winning this whole thing. And Ohio State definitely would be the favorite going into this one. I think they would be at least a 6.5 point favorite. And I think Ohio State would win the game to advance to the semifinals to take on Alabama in the Peach Bowl. We went on the other side, Michigan against Clemson in the Orange Bowl. Now, this matchup was very, very difficult to kind of predict and see who would actually win this because, again, fully healthy, the way they were playing, the style of play versus Clemson, I think Michigan would have an advantage over Clemson, I do believe. And I think the pace and the pressure would be put up more on Clemson than Michigan because they already lost their game. They were out for revenge against Ohio State. They're the ones that are on a mission. But at the same time, Clemson has something that Michigan doesn't have, and that's Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is a monster. He almost won the Heisman. He was a Heisman runner-up the year before. This year, he was leading his team again to the playoffs. And I think Clemson would still come away with the win over Michigan. I think this would be a close game. I think this would be like a 28-24, 24-21 defensive struggle game where ultimately Michigan, I think, would be in the lead in the second half, but Deshaun Watson would come up clutch and score a late touchdown or score late points to get Clemson the victory. And they advance to the semifinals. On the bottom half of this bracket, the last quarterfinal game, Oklahoma versus Penn State. Penn State was, again, playing so well. Oklahoma, I don't know if they were playing great compared to everybody else, but there's no way Penn State would not win this game. They would be favored by at least 7.5, and I think they would win the Rose Bowl over Oklahoma. I think they win by a couple scores, honestly. Barkley, McSorley, Godwin, Zigasecki. I mean, all these players on this offense were next level. The NFL talent was incredible on that team. And I think Penn State would beat Oklahoma, advance to the semifinals in the Fiesta Bowl against Clemson. So, Final Four: Alabama 1, Clemson 2, Penn State 3, and then Ohio State at the 5 seed. Those would be the Final Four teams. Obviously, the two Big Ten teams would be. Penn State would be the only different team in this hypothetical scenario, but the matchups would be different. Matchup 1: Alabama versus Ohio State. Alabama in 2016. Talked about the Big Ten's defense being suffocating. Alabama's 2016 defense, by talent alone in the NFL, was incredible. They had so much talent. Their defense, I think they only gave out 12 or 11 points a game. I think it was in the tens. Maybe it was tens. 10 points a game overall through 14 games. I mean, I don't know much to say about, like, what else I could say about their defense. It was a generational kind of talented team. And in my opinion, if Deshaun Watson in real life didn't come up clutch to win that game, that might be one of the all-time teams in Alabama history because the way their defense played and how Jalen Hurts, as a true freshman, complemented their defense, the way his style of play was, I mean, this team was incredible. And I think because of that, how good Ohio State was with JT Barrett, Urban Meyer just, coming up, getting it done in the biggest games that matter, I think he got his win over Alabama in 2014. I think Alabama gets their win back over Urban Meyer and Ohio State in this playoff. And I think it might be something where it's a 7-point game the whole way, and then Alabama wins like 10 or 14 in the end. But I do believe they win, advance to the national championship game. Clemson versus Penn State. This game would be, like I said, USC versus Alabama would be an incredible game. I think this Clemson-Penn State game would be a very high-scoring, just masterpiece. Whether Deshaun Watson just goes blow for blow with Barkley and this Penn State offense. I think this would be one of the funnest games I've ever seen. It might be even close to that real Penn State versus USC game in the Rose Bowl in real life. So who do I think would win this one? I think Clemson would still come out on top. Clemson's still a better team overall, and I think they would beat Penn State to advance in a real-life rematch, not rematch, but I guess real-life matchup in 2016 in the national championship game. Undefeated Alabama, 1 seed. Clemson, 1 loss, the 2 seed. And I think, it should be no surprise, who would win the national championship in this rematch. We're just going to assume everything else plays out. Deshaun Watson once again comes up clutch in the waning moments of this game, and Clemson wins their first national championship since the 80s, and they go 15-1, and they win the 2016 version of the 12-team playoff. What do you guys think of this video? Did you enjoy it? Who do you think should have been in this 12-team playoff that was left out? Who do you think would actually win this 12-team playoff with said teams in it? Let me know in the comments below. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for all future videos. I'm going to be doing this for every single year, leading up to 2023, and then maybe 2 years before that still. Tune in next time, though, guys, and I'll see you then.